high point and say hello once again. 21 hours have gone, and where did they go? Wow, are they busy? Busier than ever. I hope you had a great day today. We have a terrific program for you tonight, as we always try to do. Michael Collins Piper has been on this program before. His visits are not often enough to suit a lot of you and me, but he is extremely busy, and we're very honored to have him back tonight. He has a new book out called The New Jerusalem, Zionist Power in America. There's that word again, Zionist, Zionism. A lot of you don't know quite what it means. We're going to explore that in some detail. Let me read a little bit of a description from the new book for you to give you an idea. The New Jerusalem, Zionist Power in America is an eye-opening, I think that's conservative, it's a mind-boggling, inside look at the American Zionist elite today. The most thorough, fact-filled, let me say that again, fact-filled, comprehensive, up-to-date overview on the subject yet published. This is it, folks. This is absolutely indispensable reading. Here, between two covers for the first time, is hard data and information taken primarily from mainstream pro-Zionist sources relating to the power of the Zionist elite in America today. This one-of-a-kind survey does not focus on the Israeli lobby or on the historic role of the Zionists in intrigues of the past. There are lots of books, and some very good books, on those subjects. Instead, the New Jerusalem examines in stark detail the incredible array of wealth and clout, if not overwhelming power, of the American Zionist community, demonstrating beyond any question, that the Zionists undeniably constitute the power elite in the United States today. Folks, they control things here. And we're not just referring to their well-known influences over the American mass media. A lot of folks have written about that. Instead, The New Jerusalem by Michael Collins Piper goes much, much farther. For the average individual, to assemble this information would cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars and dozens of hours of research, to put it mildly. Many of the books cited are out of print and hard to find. But Michael Collins Piper's sources are all mainstream authors and sources, and all pro-Zionist. This is an invaluable resource volume you'll refer to time and time again in debating with friend and foe alike, writing letters to the editors of local newspapers, calling radio talk shows, and in the course of research. Here are just some of the highlights of this book. There's a little bit more here. I want you to listen carefully. A detailed overview of some 200 major Zionist families, who they are, what they own, where and how they made their vast fortunes. Some names you'll recognize, many you won't. This is the first time ever this information is being made available to grassroots Americans. You will be stunned at the details that Michael Collins Piper has compiled. Hundreds of cold, hard facts and figures about the sources of Zionist wealth and power in America, the industries they dominate, the impact on our culture and society, their vast influence on the education system of America, the names of Zionist political action committees, how Zionist voting power is magnified, the first ever complete accounting of the Zionist names appearing in the most recent 2004 list of the famous Forbes 400 list of the billionaires and mega millionaires in America today, available nowhere except in the pages of The New Jerusalem, and not even in Forbes itself, by the way. This is a book that's going to be around for a long, long time, and I want to welcome Michael Collins Piper back to the program. Hi, Mike. How are you?
You know how long ago I first started thinking about writing that book? 21 years ago.
Wow.
I actually started the research for that book, and then, of course, I put it aside and got involved with a lot of other things, and then ended up writing my first book, Final Judgment, and then my other book, The High Priests of War.
Right.
And I finally took that off the shelf and put it together, and then I got some additional supplemental information. It required me to sit down and rethink the whole project. But, you know, in all honesty, when it comes right down to it, although I put the book together and I've written a substantial portion of the book, much of the book was actually written for me, obviously, by other people, because the strength of the book, as those who have seen it will be first to say, and as I am the first to say, is the strength of the information that was provided in black and white by a wide variety of other writers, most of them Jewish. And what I simply did was take direct quotations and cite them very carefully and very correctly and very simply in a section of the book which covers about, I guess about 50 or 60 pages, just facts and figures about the wealth and power of the Zionist movement in America. And, I'll tell you, it was kind of interesting, Jeff. You said that the key word maybe there was Zionist, but I think the key word there really is power.
You bet.
Because,
you bet it is.
Yeah, here's the problem, Jeff. No one is here to say, and I'm not here to say, that these people who are hardline Zionists have accumulated this wealth by ill means. Now, of course, many of them did. There are crooks of all races, creeds, and colors.
You bet.
But there's one difference here with this massive accumulation of wealth in the Zionist community, and the difference here is that they are uniquely united in a way that perhaps no other group is, and they have used this power in a fashion that is not helpful to the United States or to the world. And I'll give you the most concrete and very specific example of that. That is the railroading of the American people into the war in Iraq, a war that is not about to end, right, and which only appears to be getting worse as time goes by.
A perfect example. Now, years ago, when I started this program, this month, 12 years ago, I don't know how many radio talk shows there were back then who would even dare talk about Zionism, because back then, and until really relatively a few years ago, when one said Zionist, we became immediate targets for Zionists who would start screaming anti-Semitism and all the rest of it, just because most of the power Zionists happen to be Jewish. But now, and I, like you and like others, paid a terrible price for trying to point out the difference here between those of the Jewish faith, who are of good heart and good mind, and those who are strict adherents to world domination, if not ultimate power trips. But we can do that now, and even some of the, quote, mainstream media is now talking about Zionism. They can call it neocon, politics, whatever they want, but it's Zionism. And it's been around for quite a while, but at least now it is much safer, Michael, to talk about Zionism.
And, the amazing thing about it is that at one time in this country, and of course for those who don't know what the word Zionism means, a lot of people think it's kind of a dirty word or a derogatory word or something like that. No, what Zionism is basically Jewish nationalism. That is the support for a Jewish state. And of course, in 1948, there became a Jewish state known as Israel. And it was really only in the 1960s and that what we call the Jewish lobby in America, or the Zionist lobby here in Washington, really started to escalate its power and influence. Although Jewish people had always been very influential in the United States and very wealthy, they were primarily Americans, and their focus was on America here at home.
Really an important concept. You're absolutely right. The word assimilation works for me. They were Americans.
Yeah.
And you talk to the Jews Against Zionism organization as a case in point, they'll tell you every country Jews live in should be their home, their country. This whole idea of the State of Israel, the Zionist State of Israel for Jews against Zionism, is anathema.
I mean, you cannot look at this current Iraq war without facing the reality of Zionist power in America. There's a lot of people who make the argument that, the Iraq war was about oil. Well, perhaps it was, but the real underlying factor, as Senator Ernest Stallings said prior to his retirement from the U.S. Senate, he said this whole war was about President Bush's policy of securing Israel. And President Bush, really, let's face it, folks, President Bush and all the other politicians that are so enthusiastic about Israel's interests are really not that enthusiastic about Israel's interests because they believe that God gave the land to Israel. They're enthusiastic about Israel because there's an immense amount of wealth and power in the hands of the Zionist community in America, and they can make or break American politicians. And they also have
they do.
And they do. And they also have the other effect of that is that they can dictate U.S. involvement in a war such as this. And this is why we are in the war today. And until there are some serious reconsiderations by the American people about whether or not we're going to continue to commit ourselves to these wars that Israel wants. They want a war against Syria. There's no question about that. Or they want to bring down the Syrian government. If it takes war to do it, they will. If it involves an attack on Iran, they're all in favor of that. I just saw Richard Pearl, one of the leading pro-Israel neoconservatives, say that if it's necessary for the United States to attack Iran, well then, by God, let's do it. I'm paraphrasing him, of course.
Well, yeah, that's what the man's been saying in so many words. You're absolutely right. It is. You said the power of Zionism is such that it can dictate America's involvement in war. What another way to say that is it can order America to go to war, basically, and that's what it did.
Yeah, and you know what's so interesting about it, you know, it's kind of interesting is that amazingly, it's not necessarily the government of Israel telling the United States to go to war for its defense or in its interests, but it's the powerful Zionist lobby in America backed up by billions and billions of dollars in the hands of strongly committed Zionists who bundle their campaign contributions to select politicians.
Oh, they bought and sold so many American politicians you can't even count.
And you know, this is what it's all about. I mean, you know, and you know, it's interesting, as I point out in the book, and as I know it's no secret to you or many of your listeners, you know, Webster's dictionary has now changed the definition of anti-Semitism. It used to be anti-Semitism was, you know, hatred of Jewish people, basically.
Right.
Today they say that anti-Semitism includes sympathizing with critics of Israel. In other words, sympathizing with the Palestinian people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the dictionary definition has been changed. The official Webster's dictionary. Yeah,
Webster's goes in the trash can real quick.
I mean, but see, so that's the amazing thing about it. That now, for years, there were many people who were critics of Israel who were absolutely quick to rush forward and say, well, I'm not anti-Semitic, but I'm a critic of Israel. Well, now that explanation, according to the dictionary, still means that they're anti-Semitic, which is, you know, I mean, you know, talk about Orwell. You know, it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Right. Right.
But, you know, I guess, Jeff, the way I look at it now is that, you know, I've been called so many things over the years, and I know that my critics will always continue to call me names. They can go ahead and call me anything they want because I'm going to just keep on doing what I'm doing and just putting facts out there.
Well, as long as you stick to that, obviously there's nothing much they can do except call you names.
Mm-hmm.
And when they start trying to engage in character assassination, libel, and slander, then you know, folks, that someone is telling the truth. And in this case, the facts are the facts. See, somebody else said that once a long time ago, right? Back in just a minute with Michael Collins Piper. All right, let's get right back to Michael Collins Piper. I don't know if you caught this story from Citizens for a Legitimate Government, came out day before yesterday. This is a real important indicator as to where this is going. The fake war on terrorism is beyond embarrassing. I mean, there are no terrorists except those that the Bush administrations have created through their policy of genocide, basically. Here's the story. After terrorism, the U.S. may take on extremism. The Bush regime is currently reviewing anti-terrorism policies and plans to look beyond Al-Qaeda, I guess in so many words, call the Bush administration then to focus on extremism as the next big war. Now that's thought control, folks. It's nothing less than mind control. Extremism. What a subjective term. Who's deciding what extremism is? Where's the line? Where do you step across the line? If you say one extra word in a sentence or a paragraph, are you an extremist? This is really going to hell in a handcart, and it's going very, very fast. And Zionists are at the controls of it all. Believe it. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I tell you, of course, I have been called an extremist, and, being a writer and an editor, I've always been fascinated by the misuse of the language, particularly by the Zionists and by
being raped.
Yes, and by people by the Bush administration itself. They've turned patriotism on its head, and now the people who for years considered themselves very strong patriots, like myself, are now being called anti-patriotic and un-American. Because
when they did that, excuse me, the classic example was the Oklahoma City bombing. They turned the word patriot into the dirtiest word in the English language in the American mass media within weeks after that, if not days. Patriot meant the enemy. Patriots blew up the building. And then patriotism came back in the last couple of years, enjoyed a renaissance, as it were. But now you're right. They're right back at it again.
Yeah, it's I always like to tell the story that, like roughly 25 years ago, one of my teachers in high school wanted to defame me to several other students, and he referred to me as a quote-unquote flag-waving super patriot. Well, now I'm being called unpatriotic and un-American. So, and the funny thing is, my views really haven't changed, at least as far as U.S. foreign policy and global imperialism are concerned. And yet, for holding the same views that I hold today, I'm being defamed. I mean, for years, the Anti-Defamation League called me a right-wing extremist. Well, I was on a radio talk show recently attacking the pro-Israel policies of the Bush administration, and a Bush supporter called in and called me a leftist. So I'm being called both. On the one hand, they're calling me a rightist, and on the other hand, they're calling me a leftist. And you know what I say to that? It just proves that I'm probably about as mainstream an American as you can get.
It's very, very true. The use and abuse and misuse of language has become a key, essential component in the war to control an ever dumber America and its intellect. They have corrupted so many words now and twisted them around. It's the old saying, black is white, up is down, war is peace. Same thing, it's all true. And they say these things in broad daylight in the mainstream talking head press over and over again, and after a while, it starts to stick with people. Not everyone, but a lot of people.
Oh, that's why American Free Press says the media is the enemy.
It is.
Thank God, though, there is independent media out there, like your radio show and newspapers like American Free Press, but this big broadcast media here in the United States, these tightly controlled major networks, they are the real poison today, because they are the ones who really help not just shape, but they really control the parameters.
They're the implementers.
Of debate.
They're the implementers, and they're the cops, and they do it.
Exactly. And it's so interesting to me, the impact that Fox News and the machinations of Rupert Murdoch and his media empire have played in helping tout the Bush administration and its imperial policies, its support for Israel, it's this campaign for endless war against quote-unquote terrorism and now evidently quote-unquote extremism.
Right.
In many respects, Jeff, I consider Fox News even more dangerous than the other quote-unquote liberal networks, because what Fox has done is package this neoconservative pro-Israel internationalist ideology in kind of a form of entertainment, using colorful figures like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and all the other goblins.
It's a tabloid, is what it is.
Exactly. And as I always say, it's kind of funny, for years and years, a lot of Americans didn't like the garbage that was appearing on the three major liberal networks. And now, the funny thing is, if you look at Fox News, I love to point this out. If you look at Fox News and then you look at the programming, the entertainment programming on the Fox network, it's as much garbage as anything you're going to find anywhere else.
You bet. I don't watch it. I haven't watched television in 18 years, to tell you the truth.
Well, you're probably better off, Jeff.
I know I am. If I'm in a store or an office or something, there's a TV on, I look at it, and I just shake I can't believe what I'm seeing. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. It's amazing as to what. And, I tell you, it's even watching the programs, the drama programs, they always, the villains invariably are quote unquote patriots, or people that what used to be called patriots, and now we're unpatriotic. So,
not surprised to hear it. Sure, and then of course the white American male is portrayed as a wimp, a weak, subservient type. The feminist roles are there. It's all brainwashing. You can ask the average person, you watch this, it's going to impact. No, it doesn't. I just watch it for entertainment. No, it doesn't work that way. When you stare at that tube, you go into an altered state, and all those images, all those messages, those new word usages go right into your subconscious, and they stay there. And they're there.
It's absolutely amazing as to the impact that it's had on our society.
It's the most vicious weapon ever turned loose on humankind. And one more thing, forgive the interruption again, but the Chinese, did you know this? They had a goal. They know how to control people. They learned the lesson. It's television. And their goal was a television in every single residence in China by the year 2002. And I think they made it. That's the control mechanism. That's it.
Fascinating.
They know. Now they've got it controlled. So there you go. Hold on, we'll be right back, and we're going to learn more about Michael Collins Piper's new book. It is extraordinary and extremely important. Back in just a minute. Okay, and welcome back. The new book is out, and it is available right now. Michael, tell us how to get the book, please.
Okay, well, the best thing for people to do if they're on the net is go to AmericanFreePress.net, and I hope people will not only buy the book. I love to be able to say this. I don't make a single penny off the sale of the book, so that's great because I can just really come on here and proudly promote my work and not feel like I'm a mercenary doing it. But I hope people, if they're not already subscribers to American Free Press, will maybe enter a subscription to AFP because it's a good weekly newspaper. They can get that for $17.76, just like it sounds, $17.76. And American Free Press brings a lot of news and information that you're not going to get anywhere else. And we put a lot of time and effort into trying to get out a good newspaper each week, and I think we do a pretty good job.
You do a great job. Are you growing circulation-wise?
The circulation, we had slipped for a while there. We were losing a lot of people because they didn't like us criticizing President Bush over the war, but amazingly, or I shouldn't say amazingly, but as a consequence of all the people we lost, we picked up a lot of other people who came to us precisely because they saw us on the web and saw some of our work and realized that we are doing a job and saying things that need to be said. So for every person we've lost, we picked up a few. And, it's a tough business out there for everybody these days, particularly in the publishing business with newspapers. So we're really lucky to stay on there because I know you have a good solid core of listeners, and we have a good solid core of readers, too, who stick by us through thick and thin.
Well, what really amazes me is to think how anyone with a competent, functioning, intellectual process can look at what's gone on geopolitically with the Bush administration and continue to support this. It's not a war. It's a rape, a disgusting nuclear decimation of a people and a culture is what it is.
Jeff, let me tell you something. I have a very good friend who I always call up as an example of just the kind of people who shouldn't be supporting George W. Bush in the war, but who are. This guy is one of the smartest people I know. He's a very successful lawyer. very nationally prominent, actually, in his particular field, and a longtime friend of mine. And he told me back at the beginning of the war, he said he really didn't like the idea of the war, but we have to support the president, and we have to support the troops once they're in the war.
Oh, my country, right or wrong?
Yeah, and I said to him, and he said, if you don't like the president, you vote him out and put someone in who will stop the war. And I said to him, well, if you can't discuss what lies that the president has told to get these soldiers into the war in the first place without being called unpatriotic,
right, then
you can't have any political debate.
Nope.
And there's no way that you can replace the president if you can't tell what a liar he is. And I'm sorry to say, our president is a liar. It's that simple, and it's not unpatriotic to say that. But unfortunately, my friend, who's really just one of the finest people I know, any of your listeners would be proud to have him as a friend, comes from a wonderful family. He's raised a wonderful family of his own, and I keep telling him, look, your kids are going to be next. They're going to be drafted, and I'm very, very fearful. I see that the way that the military is being covered now in the Washington Post, and the Washington Times here in Washington, and this is where it really counts. And the papers are constantly filled with articles and editorials and op-ed pieces saying we're running out of men. We've got a shortage of. We're getting short on troops. Now, how do you fill up that shortage, Jeff? I mean, it's a very frightening answer.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what it'll take for your friend to wake up, having one of his kids, God forbid, come home in a coffin.
Yeah, this is what worries me, because, I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a prediction, Jeff, and I hope we haven't ended up in the gulag. Actually, right now, Jeff, if I could press a button, I would stop everything the United States is doing in Iraq, and obviously put an end to all this and bring
Afghanistan too.
Bring all these American kids home.
Right.
But I can't press that button, and it ain't going to happen.
And you can't do it at the ballot box anymore. Either,
no,
folks.
And you can't do it at the ballot box. But my prediction is this: that within about 5 years, we are going to have a great rumbling of discontent in America as a direct consequence of the Iraq War, and some of the most eloquent, outspoken, good patriots who will be leading that criticism are going to be top-ranking U.S. military men and just basic Army grunts who came back without arms and legs and eyes, who are still alive and who are able to speak out. And when that finally happens, there is going to be a mighty reckoning. There will be a mighty reckoning.
Well, a lot of people hope so.
I believe that. I see positive, as tragic as this war is, I see positive things coming out of it. I mean, even even right now, Jeff, of course, we have there's a faction in the FBI who managed to keep alive this investigation of AIPAC, the registered lobby for Israel, and it's interesting. Apparently, this investigation, word about this investigation, was deliberately leaked by supporters of Israel in hopes that there would be then public pressure
shut it down.
to shut it down.
Yeah.
But it's one of those situations that is kind of out of control. But what's very, very interesting is that in the Forward newspaper out of New York, which is a very influential Jewish community newspaper, they quoted Mr. Jacobs of the American Jewish Committee in Washington as saying that he believes that what's happening is that there are very, very powerful, high-level people in the FBI and the CIA and others in the national security establishment and the military who are getting fed up with the power of the Zionist lobby and its misuse of power, and that this investigation of AIPAC is kind of like they're fighting back, and they're grasping at straws, trying to find some way.
Well, I hope that's right, and I don't have to tell you, and many of our listeners know that for the last 10, maybe even 15 years, there was an ever-increasing incremental purge of the military in this country of true patriot servicemen, career officers, you name it. They got rid of them.
Yeah, the Bush administration in particular was pretty bad in doing that, and they made no bones about it. I recall, and you know, like I say, this is not. We're not talking something that's top secret. I had some friends say to me the other day. I was talking about some different things that are a little bit of controversy, you know, and they said, well, why is it that you know these things and we don't? Why do you have these secret sources? And I said, none of these sources are secret. Most of the information I get, I can find just by very carefully reading the final paragraphs of a big long story in the Washington Post.
Yep.
I mean, you know, and it was on the front page of the Washington Post a few years ago, and I pointed this out in my other book, The High Priests of War, that there was literally a plot, a plan to cut off heads, to make heads roll in the military for anyone who was suspected of dissenting against the Bush plan to go into war in Iraq.
Yep.
And that's the bottom line. What people always seem to forget, that the people who were pushing for the Iraq War, it was not the military. It was these civilian armchair, quote-unquote, intellectuals, these neoconservatives, many of them Jewish, not all of them, but many of them Jewish, and certainly all strong supporters of Israel. And that's why, as I say, it comes back to what we started off with, that there's this ongoing misuse of power by people who have such immense power that anyone who dissents against them really takes very strong career risks and professional risks. I mean, I have the luxury of being able to speak out because I happen to work for a newspaper, an outspoken newspaper, but there's a lot of good people out there who are doctors and lawyers and, accountants and things like that who share my views and my concerns and certainly yours. And they're in a position where if they were to speak out too loudly, too publicly, they could have their heads cut off.
You got it.
It's all, and here's the thing, Jeff, this is what I really see. As much power as the Zionist movement has in America, much of that power, very real though it is actually a lot of bluff and bluster in a certain fashion, because they are so accustomed to shouting down their critics.
They've got their phone trees, they've got their press plants, they can do anything they want.
The bullying and the shouting and the screaming is so intense that a person is exposed to it just briefly and immediately wilders.
They want nothing to do with it. It's an overwhelming
but eventually
assault.
What's going to happen, especially I think, if this Iraq business gets worse, more and more people are going to say to hell with it and stand up and say something.
Well, I've got my fingers crossed that you're 100% right. We fought a nuclear war in Afghanistan. We fought one under Clinton in Yugoslavia. We fought one in Iraq right now. These people are ruined. They're not ruined for this generation. They're ruined for dozens of generations to come. And all of you know, who listen to this program and read the American Free Press, that our men and women coming back from Iraq will be coming back irradiated. They'll be coming back on the verge of becoming sick, ill. Many of them will die. They'll spread it to their families because it'll be in their clothing. We're talking about nano-sized particulates of so-called depleted uranium. These are uranium weapons, and our troops breathe them just like the Iraqi women and children in the cities and villages over there. Be right back. Okay, welcome back. Number 2, last half hour with Michael Collins Piper tonight. AmericanFreePress.net. want you to go visit there. Click on that. Take a look at the stories. We have a lot at Rense.com. They've got a ton at AFP as well. You'll also see on the left-hand side, The New Jerusalem, Zionist Power in America. That's the brand new book we're going to talk about in this half hour by Michael Collins Piper. It's loaded with facts, folks. There's no arguing with the truth. You can't do it. One thing that Mike mentioned in the last hour, you'll find down at the bottom of that homepage at AmericanFreePress.net is Uncle Sam wants addicts and misfits. And we're talking about the military, of course, and it is true. The U.S. military is headed for drastic drops in the quality of its troops and morale if current trends continue. And current trends, folks, will continue. So, yes, the draft is coming under one form or another. They're continuing to grind up American men and women over there at a rate that far exceeds and surpasses the official verdict in the media. What is it, 1,600 now, something dead? It's probably 6,000 or 7,000. We don't know. They lie. And when you said the president lies, President Bush doesn't just lie once in a while. President Bush lies all the time. It's structural to the presidency now, at least in terms of the Bush administration. I hear that man talk, and I don't know about you, I actually have to turn I can't listen to him, Mike. It bothers me that much.
I agree with you completely, Jeff. In fact, people say to me, I've told different people, they've asked me if I watched the president on TV, and I say, no, I didn't. And they say, oh, well, you're supposed to be a reporter. You should be on top of these things. Well, no, what I do, I read the transcript the next day in the paper because I get so infuriated watching him on television that I don't want to throw something at my TV. My publisher calls me a rich and famous author, but I tell you, if I broke my TV, I couldn't afford to pay to get a new one. So,
well, I hear you.
Yeah, it's I tell you, this is the thing. Somebody recently wrote a book called "When Presidents Lie," and their whole theme is that lying more or less has become a part of the American presidency. But I think George Bush, he's taken it, and I'm no fan of Bill Clinton, but I saw someone recently point out that the lie that Bill Clinton told about Monica Lewinsky didn't have the impact of killing 1,600 Americans like George Bush's lies about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
And how many Iraqis? 100,000?
Yeah, not to mention the Iraqis. God forgive me for not mentioning all those people, too.
And we can't forget the Afghanis, all those poor people over there that have been slaughtered and are just...
Jeff, I was thinking on the break here, since 2003... I've had the fortune of being invited all over the world to speak. I would have never, ever thought that was possible. When I was growing up, I went to Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. I went to Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia.
Wow.
I went to Tokyo, Japan. I've been all over Canada. I've been in Moscow, and I'll tell you the one thing that is common in all of those diverse places is that people there in all of those places, different cultures, different religions, as different can be, all of those people are cognizant of one thing that most Americans are unaware of, and that is the subject of the New Jerusalem, Zionist power in America.
Really?
It's like everybody, and I had people. When I was in Malaysia, my host took me on a little tour of this wonderful historic port city, the port city of Malacca, a city that's been occupied by every Western European power that could occupy it.
I've heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had they have like a rickshaw there, and we toured around in rickshaws. And the rickshaw driver, when he asked me where I was from, I think he probably figured I was an American. And he said, "Sir," he says, welcome to Malaysia. He says, I know you're an American. He said, but I want to tell you something. He says, I keep hearing the American media say that the rest of the world hates America. He said, we don't hate Americans. We like Americans. A lot of us would move to America if we could. He says, but we don't like your president. We don't like his Zionist advisors, and we don't like their policies. And that's if I were to die tonight, that's, I suppose, the one message that I would want to impart to anybody listening in here tonight who believes what President Bush says. I've never seen someone. I just saw something in the paper today. He was attacking Amnesty International for criticizing the treatment of the prisoners at Guantanamo, and
right.
The guy from Amnesty International came out and said, "Hey, look, whenever President Bush wanted to attack Saddam Hussein, he relied on our criticisms of Saddam Hussein. Now the president's turning around and saying we're not a reliable source." And, that, again, it comes down to all these double standards and this bullying and this lying that we find so common in U.S. policy, particularly in the Middle East.
Right. It's thuggery.
Yeah, it's thuggery. That's a good word for it. And and this is the thing. People around the world don't hate the United States, but they hate what the people who run the United States are doing. And the people who run the United States are not the average American voter.
No, they aren't. And the father of Malaysia, Mr. Mohammed, has spoken out very loudly and clearly about that. He knows, they know, and it's amazing to hear you say that. I'm not surprised. I'm glad to hear you say that the rest of the world, by and large, can see there's been essentially a coup d'etat here in this country. We've been overthrown to a large degree by a Zionist neocon minority. Very vicious, very ruthless, and very clever. And never forget that for a moment. Let's talk a little bit about the book. It's loaded with facts and data. Just put some data out there for us. Put some of the facts on the table.
Boy, oh boy, that's hard to do.
I know it is.
It's and as I say, all the information that I have, is cited from largely Jewish writers, essentially bragging. I have to say that's really what it is.
No, there's a lot of arrogance there, and they do trip themselves up.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I would say probably. I'll tell you what, the final quotation in the book, I'm going to read it. I hate to read things over the air, but I'm going to read it because it really summarizes it all. And this is Professor Norman Cantor, who is Jewish. In his book, The Sacred Chain, he writes this: in the 4 decades after 1940, Jews came home in American society to suburban comfort, to penetration of academia and the privileged bastions of the learned professions, to corporate business, to politics and government and controlling levels of the media. Jews were overrepresented in the learned professions by a factor of 5 or 6. In 1994, Jews were only 3% of the American population, but their impact was equivalent to an ethnic group comprising 20% of the population.
Yeah, sure.
Nothing in Jewish history equaled this degree of Jewish accession to power, wealth, and prominence. Not in Muslim Spain, not in early 20th century Germany, not in Israel itself, because there were no comparable levels of wealth and power on a world-class scale in that small country to attain. So, here we have a Jewish academic basically saying that Jewish power in the United States has reached its zenith, this incredible, immense power beyond anything in history, and that's really what we're talking about here, power.
And that's the point you make in the book, and you it's not something you've cobbled together from here. These are mainstream people, very powerful people.
Yeah, these are not anti-Semites, or these are not neo-Nazis. These are, and the thing about it is that, we have here's the thing, the Forbes 400 list, there's an incredible number of Jewish supporters of Israel on that list.
Yes, by the way, it's not 3%, it's less now.
Yeah, it's supposedly like 2.5% of the population.
Factor in 25 million illegal aliens.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's another factor, too. Yeah, that's true enough. But what's very, very interesting is that if Forbes were to compile a list of the Forbes 800 or the Forbes 1000, you would probably, at that level, and this is pure speculation on my part, but I would say it's learned speculation based upon what I discovered in the process of writing this book. I think you would find that of the second 400, from the 400 to 800, you would probably find a substantial majority of them being people within the Zionist community. And in fact, it's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine who's retired college professor in international relations, and he had just finished reading my book, and he said, he said, I always knew this or suspected it, but your book has only confirmed it to me in a way that I never realized how immense this power is.
It is, and no discussion of American politics or world geopolitics, especially the Western world, can be even considered remotely credible unless this issue is taken on and introduced and put on the table in the beginning.
That's correct.
This is it. This is it right now. Okay, back in just a minute, our final section coming up with Michael Collins Piper. Book is out. The New Jerusalem. This is a survey with nothing but facts. No speculation, no conjecture, no hearsay. Zionist power in America. Michael Collins Piper. Okay, we just have about 5 minutes left, and we could talk for hours. But anything else you want to make sure we put out there?
There is something I think that's very important, and it's kind of interesting that it came out just as I was wrapping up the book, and I added a more or less a closing chapter to the book, and it's regarding a new thesis that's being put forth by the Zionists and their propagandists in the media, and it came out in Commentary, the magazine of the American Jewish Committee. There's a writer named David Galerter, and basically he puts forth this thesis that if you are anti-Semitic or anti-Israel, you are therefore anti-American.
Oh.
Now, that is an
astonishing
equation, which is, of course, an absolute horrendous lie.
Yep.
And yet, this is the thesis that is being put out. You're seeing it more and more in the media, particularly here in the neoconservative Washington Times newspaper, and in all the output of the columnists and think tanks and people that are associated with the neoconservative network, and really it's so horrendous, it's so extraordinary. But basically they're saying that, and this is what Galerner says, that America and Americanism really represent Zionism, and that in effect that the United States is the real ultimate Zionist dream, that while the state of Israel, of course, is like the spiritual homeland for Zionism,
amazing.
The United States is Zionism.
Talk about arrogance.
It is arrogance, and it's very frightening arrogance, because it all comes back to what you were saying earlier, this new approach by the Bush administration to not just target Islamic terrorists or terrorists in general, but to target extremists. And of course, by their definition, of anyone who is a critic of the president,
anyone who disagrees.
Anyone who disagrees is an extremist.
Right, and think of all the Christian Zionists who will be the last to figure this whole game out, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but there are millions of them.
Yeah, they have been led down a garden path that really is going to lead to their destruction, because they've proven to be, I'm sorry to say, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody out there, but they've proven to be useful idiots for the Zionist cause.
Oh. Perfect shock troops. Perfect.
Yeah, we're talking. The Zionist Judas goat has led these Christian lambs to the slaughter, and it's getting worse by the day. But as I say, in the book, I put it this way. I say the wave of the future is rolling toward American shores, and it's going to come down with a thundering clap, and there will be a reckoning. It's a very frightening situation, and that's why it's so important that so many people understand what is happening and why it's happening, and not be afraid to confront the facts, because the facts are right there.
You've done it beautifully. Another thing we need to talk about just for a moment here is that when power becomes so absolute that literally less than, and not all American Jews are Zionists. So
exactly.
let's say a fraction of 1% of the population of this country, a fraction of 1%.
Exactly.
Talks about how America is the true Israel on the planet. This is their home. They have co-opted and taken America, less than 1% of an activist element of our population. Come on, gang. Look, this is incredible.
This country belongs to all of us. And, I'll tell you, when I was in Malaysia, the very day I arrived there, the Prime Minister, not Dr. Muhammad, but Mr. Abdullah, who's the new Prime Minister, the headline on the national paper was "Think Nationalist," says Abdullah. And the point of the speech that he had given, which they were quoting, was that Malaysia is a very ethnically diverse country with a lot of different minorities. Although Islam is a state religion, it's not. Every religion flourishes very freely there, and there's a multiplicity of ethnicities, even within the Chinese community itself. For example, which is very strong there. But different groups of Chinese and so on. But in any case, his point was this: that no one minority should have any influence greater than any other, that no single group should have the power to dictate the course of the nation's affairs.
And here we are.
The nation has to move forward united as a nation, not dictated by one small group.
And here we are, literally a fraction of 1% of the population is. And remember, power corrupts absolutely, but beyond that, power is a drug. These people are so high on that power. It's got to be incredible.
That's I have a quote from Harry Truman's private diaries in the book. And Harry Truman. If it wouldn't have been for Harry Truman, there might not have been a state of Israel. Really, I mean, he's the one who gave it the imprimatur. But in his own private diary, he said, I'll quote: "The Jews have no sense of proportion, nor do they have any judgment on world affairs. When they have power, neither Hitler nor Stalin has anything on them for cruelty or mistreatment to the underdog."
Wow.
And that's a pretty harsh judgment from one of America's most beloved presidents in his private diary.
Wow. Wow, what a way to end another great conversation. The door is always open here, my friend, anytime at all. Just let me know.
Jeff, absolutely. Always enjoy it, and we'll do it again soon.
Thank you,
I'll try to get a better phone next time.
You're fine. We heard you loud and clear. Thanks.
All right, that's good. Thanks again, Jeff. Thanks to all your listeners.
Indeed. Good night. Michael Collins Piper, his new book, The New Jerusalem, Zionist Power in America. You can't understand what's going on, folks, unless you read this book. You just can't. All right, we'll be back with more in a few minutes.